Freak Nation, he's been coming in to the Freak Nation since he was 15 years old as we celebrate 25 years of Speed Freaks. Graham Rahal here at the Freaks. And Graham, damn it, I wish it was the fact that you're coming in to talk about this awesome partnership that you've got with John Force Racing coming up with Graham Rahal Performance, right?
Yeah, well, we could talk a little bit about that too if you want to, but yeah, it's always some fun things to discuss.
And one thing that I may not always agree with Graham Rahal, but one thing that I've admired about the guy was you don't find too many drivers out there that will speak their mind, whether it's right, wrong, and different. He speaks his mind, which has been refreshing, frankly, from our standpoint, for someone that we're fans of the Open Wheel Series. So that's why we wanted to get you in here today, Graham.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's look. I obviously with social media has given a lot of people a voice who shouldn't have a voice, or don't know enough to have a voice. Um, but in my case, yeah, look, I feel strongly about certain things. I feel strongly about my sport, and the time, the effort, the dedication that hundreds of people put in, week out to make it, to make it possible. And I feel strongly that the media has a responsibility to report things, not only accurately, but in my opinion, in a light that is cohesive, in a tone that is not divisive. And unfortunately, I feel like sometimes, even in motorsports, that's not necessarily the case, and there's a pattern, to those who do that. And so for me, I'm not going to sit back and just take it. As I said, I'm aware too, right? Like, I'm not oblivious to it. You guys, like, sometimes I'll sit and say things like, stop, sugarcoating things, like it's not great. But in IndyCar at this given time, we're two races in. We're two races into a schedule that has been set for quite some time, meaning a lot of people didn't like thermal as far as the location. It felt like rich people only. Okay, well, that's fine. I mean, there were tickets on sale. And you know what? The people that came, as far as I knew, the ones I talked to, they loved it. They thought it was amazing. Now, was there 100,000 people? No. And is that what we want? Yeah, that is what we want. But the realities of it is that the schedule was set, 18 plus months ago. And that's the hand that you were dealt. Is thermal the reason that the TV rating was poor? No, I don't want to read that, because that has nothing to do with it. In my opinion, it's, the reasons that you see a TV rating that struggles is time of day, who you're against. We were head to head at thermal against NASCAR. We were head to head at thermal against a bunch of kind of a March Madness craze, right? So you've got a lot of factors that play into that. And I just find it funny how some in the media, you go from one race that was 1.45 million and everybody's like, whoa, that was almost double last year, to the next race where, you're down a couple 100,000 viewers from the year before. And, oh no, the world is falling apart. I mean, come on now. Let's have a little bit of consistency to our reporting, a little calmness to our reporting, a little bit of positivity instead of the negativity constantly to, what we're saying. And ultimately, that's why, I said what I said, and I tweeted Nathan Brown and stuff, because, let's not fool ourselves. The majority of the stories have a pessimistic, negative sort of connotation to them, and it's a little old. So, yeah, I mean, I fired back.
Graham Rahal, one of the reasons, Kenny alluded to this, we have you on is because we enjoy you being arguably the voice of the drivers, and now also the voice of some of the team owners, the investment side of the IndyCar series. Your vision is from so many angles. So yes, we are talking in this moment, post-thermal race 2 of the IndyCar series in 2025, coming off of a poor TV rating, and there's a lot of negativity. There's some positivity out there as well. But right now, I also, as a person who's been a fan of the series for decades, I also want to focus on the fact that I feel like I'm constantly, not as a media person, but as a fan, slapping my forehead in, what are we doing? I still don't see the marketing that I want to see with arguably some of the greatest drivers out there. In my opinion, going from St. Pete to Thermal, there's a 3-week gap. I'm not a fan of that. And the marketing fell off. Those Super Bowl commercials went almost flat. What's going on and who should be held responsible for that?
Well, I mean, look, as I said just a second ago, I'm not sitting here saying everything is rosy. I have the same questions. And well, not only that, like, let's be honest here. When you look at marketing, they're only marketing 3 drivers. That's factual. You know, the only things that you have seen to date is Pato, Joseph, and Pillow. There's a lot of other great people. Forget about me, because as we kind of talked about off air, I'll be very honest with you. I could care less about attention. I've got way better things and more important things to do in my life than worry about if somebody on Twitter likes me or not. To me, though, you've got guys like Will Power who have stood the test of time, that continue to, have exceptional races. You got guys like Scott Dixon. How do you ignore Scott Dixon, the greatest of all time? I understand that Alex Palou is beating Scott Dixon week in and week out nowadays, but that doesn't take away from who he is and what he has done and what he continues to do, let alone one of the biggest sponsor names and most consumer-driven sponsor names in the entire sport, right? Like we have Fifth Third Bank, they've got PNC. Those are things that you and I can walk up to. Those are banks that we can walk up to and we can be clients of today, right? So focus on consumer-driven things. That's great for the client or for the series as well. But I'm not going to sit and say everything is rosy. I have asked Penske numerous times, Penske Entertainment, about the plan. There's been a lot of changes there. I hope we see more. Okay. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat that. I don't think that it's fair to rely just solely on Fox. I think Fox is going to do tremendous things for our sport. As I said a minute ago, we're in the early days of Fox. I think that the future is great for what Fox brings to us. I agree on the schedule. 3 weeks. I mean, now we go Thermal, 3 weeks to Long Beach. Mm-hmm. But then we run every freaking weekend from then till, the end of August, right? So the schedule is a bit of a head scratcher, but again, like I said a minute ago too, these are things that are predetermined. They were already set a while ago. I guarantee you, if you talk to Doug Bowles now, which let's not forget, Doug's a week onto the job, 2 months. So a lot of these things were set prior. Doug came up to me after the race at Thermal and goes, "What do you think? What do you think?" I mean, this is 5 minutes after the race. "What do you think? Should we come back here? Should we not? Where do we need to look to go?" And so to me, those are things that I look at, like, they're aware of it. People have got to be patient. People have got to understand too, that their tone, the media has got to understand that their tone and the way that they go about energizing their groupies is, frankly, has an effect that can be put into a positive spin if they so wish. I'm not saying to fool anybody. What I'm saying is, if you look at Thermal, and you look at what Thermal actually does for us, there's a lot of people that attended Thermal that don't get exposed to any of the other IndyCar races that are CEOs of companies, that own companies. I mean, I had friends reach out that are big time CEOs of companies that I do business with that I sell cars to my performance shop and stuff, that I didn't even know they're going to the race. Like, dude, that was amazing. Okay, now those are people that can become sponsors. They can become future team owners. Let's look at it from that perspective. Future team owners. Okay, maybe I'm one of them, whether I want to be or not. I'm not there now, nor do I have any say in that now, whether people believe that or not. You got Roger Penske. Okay, you got Chip Ganassi. You got Bobby Rahal. You got Mike Lanigan. You've got guys that are aging, let's just say. One of the most important things in our sport right now, in motorsports, because if I even look at NASCAR, you got Hendrick, Childress, you've got Joe Gibbs, a lot of guys who are aging. If I look at our sport, the focus of our sport today has to be to create longevity with new partners, new owners, and youth. And Thermal, whether people like it or not, it does open those opportunities to people. I'm not going to name names, but people that were there that are worth tons of money that go, hell, I want to be involved in this. How do I get involved? While it's not ideal, maybe to some people, because there's not 100,000 people, sometimes it takes these things to help move the sport forward. And sometimes those things are not as obvious to the eye as they should be. But I think we've got to keep all of those in mind, and the media could be just as impactful to report that. Guys, you're NHRA fans, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the future of NHRA look like? Let's be honest.
Also aging.
Connie Kalita, John Forrest.
Yep.
John Schumacher is now passed, sadly. Look at the role he had in the sport. You've got, they've got to be concerned. We've got to be we have got to find the next generation to be able to take take motorsport forward. And I think sometimes the fans don't necessarily see that because they don't understand how those connections maybe come to be. And so I think in some ways thermal's impactful.
That's an incredibly fair point. And I guess I feel like there's a lack of transparency coming from the IndyCar series. I would like to know that those conversations are indeed being had. It's not your responsibility, Graham. It's not, anybody's responsibility except for Mark Miles, Doug Bowles, and Roger Penske to make sure those people continue to come in and want to invest in the series. So how do we know that's happening?
Well, I can tell you from our side, it's a constant. I mean, that's one of our biggest focuses, day in and day out as a team. I can't speak for other teams. But what I can speak to at Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan Racing is our future's great. Between myself, between Patrick Lanigan and the Lanigan family, Alex Wright, who's involved in our team, a very young guy out of Central Ohio, great family. Alex is my age, a little bit older than me. Our future is great. We've worked very hard over the last 24 to 36 months to make sure that our team has that sort of future and focus. And so, I feel confident in Penske. Obviously, you've got Greg Penske and others, but the next generation of them is going to be great. But I can't speak for the others, Crash. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I think last weekend generated some great conversation. We with Mobile One, we were fortunate to have a kind of a little cocktail hour, and there was rubbing a lot of elbows with a lot of very impactful people that could be involved in the sport going forward. And whether fans want to believe it or see it or not, IndyCar is very intriguing right now because actually you can get into IndyCar as a team or buy into an existing team like Coin or something else for for a relatively good deal, compared to any other motorsport, frankly. And so it is an intriguing property for sure.
Okay. In talking about the schedule and going back there, I'm always I'm old school though. So I go back to the 90s where I freaking loved going Phoenix into Long Beach, and Phoenix was your oval before the Indy 500. I feel like that sort of oval momentum is needed on the IndyCar calendar going into the Indy 500 somewhere in the spring. And I know all the excuses. You can't run within 90 days of a NASCAR race, blah, blah, blah.
Okay, so here's my excuse.
Okay.
So you're like every person on Twitter. Every one of them, meaning I hear this day in and day out. So here's my question to you. Why don't you guys come to the oval races then?
I know. I know.
So that's
frustrating too.
I hear this all the time. We need ovals. Okay, fair enough. But again, as somebody who speaks my mind, and maybe others won't say that, my response to the fans goes, then why aren't the stands full? If you want Kentucky that bad, why does nobody show up? If you want St. Louis, which by the way, St. Louis was an awesome race last year because my car, I had an engine failure, right? I got to watch half the race. Awesome race to watch. Stands should be full, right? I mean, 100% full. I get Iowa sucked last year, I'm aware. But you go to you try Phoenix. I mean, I don't. Phoenix is hard for us now. It's been so NASCAR-ized, let's call it, high banking, and really a one-lane track. And I mean, maybe today it would be different. With a tire that degrades a little bit than what we had. It's been 7 years. I don't know. High downforce cars when we ran there last. I'm all for it. Like, I'd love to see more ovals, but the reality is people don't come. And so it's a hard, even look at NASCAR, right? I heard of, I don't know if it's true at all, but I heard a rumor the other day they're going back to Montreal. I'm sure I read that on X. Like, that's, I mean, sure, must be true.
Of course.
But you get what I'm saying? Like, they're looking outside of it because the crowds aren't showing up for them at most of the ovals either anymore. So it's a difficult dynamic because I agree, it'd be great to build momentum. I agree. It would be, great to, I mean, Milwaukee was a tremendous race last year for IndyCar. It was insane. Tire degradation was awful. So I hope Milwaukee is full packed house this year. But in me, that's the one thing I would say is that we are forced to go to the Long Beaches and the St. Pete's and all these because the crowd is there. And whether people like it or not, they come.
The good news is, moving forward to 2026, the Arlington race, I have a feeling, is going to be a smashing success.
Yeah.
Mexico City is arguably all but done. So the spring is going to be filled with some of those amazing venues as well. But what I was saying was, why couldn't we try to make an oval before Indy, whether it's Richmond or Homestead or Atlanta or Phoenix? Just pay the freaking track fee and make it work and then build upon it. Because Fox is seemingly wanting to make it work. So Indy.
You could do it. I mean, you could do it. I mean, Homestead, we haven't raced in years and years and years. But Homestead was awesome. Like, the last race there was so good. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I got, like I said, I got to say that I feel like, there's no doubt that you could. The one of the tricky parts of that time of year, even this time of year, is just trying to find a track, that is suitable, that the weather's good. Obviously, Phoenix is a great one. Homestead is a good one. I suppose Atlanta can work as well. Although I've never seen IndyCar around Atlanta, but but that is one of the challenges as well. But like you said too, there's some great races coming online. I think people look at Thermal and they're frustrated too, but people can't forget, like, Nashville was a blockbuster, right? Like, Nashville is a street race. And unfortunately, the rug pulled out from under us. That wasn't the promoter's fault. That wasn't the series' fault. The way things worked out with the Titans, it was a kind of a bummer. But hopefully we can see, Mexico City come on for Pato. I think it's really important to maximize Pato's popularity. Hopefully we can see the Dallas thing do very well. There's been lots of rumors about Denver again. Denver was awesome when we used to race there in the past. So I think IndyCar has some great opportunity ahead of it. I'd love, personally, I would love to see another Canadian race on the Western side. I mean, Vancouver would be great again, something like that. There's just a great fan base up there. But you are right that in that sense, I mean, even if the crowd isn't huge, to get, well, and actually from a driver perspective, it'd be nice to do an oval before you go to Indy. I mean, it'd be nice to do something before you go to the fastest place of the year, for sure.
Graham Rahal joining us here in the Freak Nation. And Graham, I think it's also a case of, Crash, me, we get a little inside baseball from our perspective. And then we also deal with those fans on X. We're there at the track. We're there at Indianapolis Motor Speedway in the stands, and you see them as well. With Indianapolis Motor Speedway, I see so many blue-collar fans there that I do in any other track on the planet, frankly. And the issue, as you brought it up with Thermal, was that highfalutin billionaire attitude that if Penske or somebody would come out and just say, guys, this is a B2B race. Just tell us what it is, man.
Yeah.
Because it just,
I think
the surface, the surface, it just didn't look good, Graham.
Yeah. I think it's, I think in part it is, but I think it's also situational, as I just said. I don't think, I think that some of the things that have transpired over the last couple of years, races that kind of folded, opportunities that kind of disappeared, I think that forces your hand at a place like Thermal. But also, I'm going to give Thermal some credit here. Tim, who owns it, Tim's eagerness to work with IndyCar and Tim's eagerness to have us there and change the track and fix things. And it was a breath of fresh air. I understand people get frustrated by that, but it was nice to say, hey, we don't really, like, this isn't working for us. And bam, okay, well, we'll resolve that. Because I got to tell you, like, other than the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, there's really not a single track that does that and sort of supports the series in that manner anymore. So, so in some ways it was nice, but again, you know, I think I think that what we could do is take the positives from it, you know, of what it was, and it was great racing, by the way. I could tell you from my standpoint, it's a shame there weren't 100,000 people, because they probably would, because you can see a lot there. It's in the desert, so it's flat. But like, the tire degradation was off the charts.
Yes.
I've never had a race pace be like 8 seconds slower than qualifying, and just hanging on. I mean, my hands were destroyed from just sliding all over. And 1 minute you were closing somebody at 1.5 seconds a lap. The next minute they were blowing by you again. It was just a wild experience. And so that was fun, because I've never been on another road course that kind of had that style of racing. So look, I mean, I think that there's, you know, there's a lot of, there's a lot of potential for the series. I think that's the positive. I think we need to, you know, keep harping on that. There's a lot of potential for Fox. You know, Crash, does the marketing need to be better? I mean, look, you know, your lips to Penske Entertainment's ears. You know, I totally agree in a lot of aspects. But I also believe that, as I said from the start, there's a certain group that continues to do nothing but be pessimistic and negative about pretty much everything. And I don't think that that's called for either, which is where my
why don't other drivers step up and say, hey, how they feel then?
Besides, let's say you and Connor Daly seem to be the only ones.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Rossi will speak up too. If he wants, if he's engaged on that day, if he's looking at Twitter. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I feel like most are afraid of, well, you have 3 that can't say anything.
Right.
Okay. Most are afraid of, and like Dixie's just the ultimate, right? He's just like an easygoing guy. Like, he doesn't really care. But I think too, it's important that everybody realizes that, you know, sometimes the truth does need to be spoken, but even more importantly, like, for the longevity of the sport, when we're all gone, you know, we need to start doing things and changing the narrative to a positive light, because, you know, if you look at IndyCar, you look at where it's at, let's be honest, like, what has NASCAR's car count done over the last 10 years?
Down.
Okay. What has NHRA's car count done over the last 10 years?
Down.
What has NHRA's team owners count gone?
Ooh, down.
Okay. What has IndyCar done?
Up.
Exactly.
That's a valid point.
So we can be negative all day long, but we're one of the few sports that has trended in the right direction. So
IndyCar and sports cars. Yep.
Let's just continue to see the positives, you know, try to move it forward.
Real quick, before we let you go, you brought up tracks and them not necessarily being cohesive with the series. I do see that as well. I want to address that real quick, because we've had no fewer than, honestly, 4 track promoters tell us that they don't get cooperation from IndyCar's marketing side. One of them, was Nashville, and now Nashville's been taken over by Penske Entertainment Group. That's an issue. I wish there was a better marriage between track promoters and the series, because, again, that falls back on marketing. Doug Bowles is going to be fine in this new position, but I still feel like he has that sandbag of a group that he's got to work with that hasn't done anything for the last 10 years.
Yeah. I you know, my take on this is that I think they've got some quality people. I know they do. But I think they're really thin. You know, I think they're really thin on just staffing. But look, I don't know the ins and the outs of the way that they run their business. And we all have our frustrations, but there's also a lot of reasons to be positive and thankful for what Roger did. I mean, guys, if Roger doesn't buy the series, I mean, right before COVID, you know, I'm not really sure where we sit today. Well, there's a lot of frustration with the way the marketing has gone and stuff. I think we also, I think we've also got to give it a bit of a heartbeat here to see how things change. They're aware of it. I think they've seen it. They've heard the talk. They know the struggles. It's a small staff. I think that's one of the things. If I look at, I think at my company, at Graham Rahal Performance, I think I had more marketing staff than IndyCar. So that's a challenge. Like, I think that needs to be addressed. There's no doubt about it, for sure.
The optics of that, because people just want to knee jerk and say, but Roger Penske's a billionaire. He can hire a bunch of people. Granted, that's easier said than done, but the optics of that is hard too.
Okay, but Roger is a billionaire and Roger's been very successful. But remember that there are a lot of billionaires that run companies that are not consumer direct customers or companies. Now everybody's gonna say, well, he owns a bunch of car dealerships. Yeah, so do we. Not nearly as many, but we have 17. And the marketing in those car dealerships is minimal, because if I'm going to go buy a Honda Civic, I'm going to probably Google Honda Civic and I'm going to find my Honda dealer that's closest to me. That's probably the extent of my marketing, because really people are going to come to me. The difference in my business and Graham Rahal Performance is nobody needs to come to me. So how do we attract people? We got to go out and sell our service. We've got to go out and sell, our sales, what we do, what kind of cars that we sell, what do we handle? I mean, why are we doing the NHRA thing with JFR? We do a lot of custom fabrication, machine shop. We do turbo kits. We do dyno tuning. We build rolled cages. We do a ton of stuff people don't know that we do. So we are a consumer-driven business. I have got to promote that to a consumer. It's different than my Honda dealership.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In State College, Pennsylvania, if you want a Honda, you're going to Bobby Rahal Honda. I mean, you get what I'm saying? It's different. So people have got to understand too, that while Penske has been a consumer-related company, I don't know that they've had to have the marketing wherewithal that we have. And even going back, if you look at Penske sponsors over the term of their, existence, Penske was probably one of the very first, if not the first, to master the business-to-business relationship and the opportunity that presented, right? Now all of us are trying to find that opportunity each and every day because it's sustainable. It's sustainable. If I bank with Fifth Third and our businesses do and everything else, guess what? You scratch my back, I'm scratching yours, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas just write me a check, that doesn't really exist today. So what I'm saying is give some patience. This is my take. My take may be wrong, but I think Penske, Roger has done an amazing job, but was Detroit Diesel selling direct to consumers? Okay. Different, right? So it's a little bit of a different take on, on marketing. And that's all I'm saying. Let's be a little patient. I think they get it. And I'm sure Fox is going to push them. And look, great races can fix a lot of things. And so hopefully, we'll be able to point ourselves in the right direction.
Hey, Graham, would you welcome interest from Liberty Media or Endeavor?
Oh, yeah. I would. On a personal level, yeah, for sure.
You talk about marketing dollars in pockets. Liberty Media would be a hell of a...
Yeah, and that's the thing people don't realize too. Like, everybody's like, oh, well, look at the Vegas Grand Prix. I'm like, yeah, they spent $500 million. Like, do you think we haven't spent that in the last 50 years? I don't know what you want. Like, that's not, I mean, it's just so different.
Hey, you won Vegas back in the day, didn't you?
Like I feel like they could, this would be easy pickings. The racing, the venues, the drivers, like I said, the team counts up, new teams, great sponsors in the sport. Like it's easy pickings, but like I said, I'm not going to be ungrateful either to what Roger has done.
Mm-hmm.
So,
all right. Well, hey, real quick, didn't you win Vegas back in the day, kart days?
Go-karts?
No, karting, or what was it?
AJ Allmendinger was the
Didn't
winner.
you win Vegas? The road
no,
course?
I at the Supernats, I finished on I got like a trophy, a plastic trophy that's as tall as me still from those days. But no,
I'm talking about the goddamn road course there in Vegas at one year. Didn't you win?
No. I think Bourdais won that race.
Yeah.
We only did the street race. We only did once.
Yeah.
Then it was over by the Golden Nugget.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Pretty fun though.
memories.
All right, man.
All right, guys.